So it's a perfect bridge to what I'm going to talk about, this patient-focused drug development, and really the need for our community to have a well-coordinated advocacy strategy at both the state and the federal level, and how really everyone can get involved and lend their voice in the process and be a part of this, and make sure that our voices are integrated into every stage of drug development. So I want to start, if my slides come up. It's always that fun wait. Just reminding everyone we're part of a larger drug development ecosystem, okay, with you at the center, patients, families, loved ones. But it's much larger than that, and it's made up of living components. These are people, stakeholders, like researchers, and physicians, and Congress, people who work at federal agencies, pharmaceutical companies, who you're going to hear from today, and payers. And these are all people that make decisions that impact your life, okay? And they're working in conjunction with the non-living components of legislation, policies and regulations, and they're impacted by funding cycles and markets. And for those living components, those decision makers, we want to make sure they understand your lived experience so that they're making informed decisions. And we want to understand how we can impact those non-living components of legislation and policies and regulations to benefit our community. But we have to always remember that we live within this ecosystem, and patient advocacy groups are trying to ensure that we're looking at how do we inform those living components and how do we impact those non-living components. So that's why for an effective rare disease advocacy strategy, we have to look at a multi-pronged approach to this. And that includes regulatory, and Congress, and access and coverage. And it can't just be a Angelman syndrome focused strategy. We have to look to rare disease, as Annie so eloquently put. It has to be both. And I've been in close touch with Amanda Moore at ASF because we realized this has to be collaborative and comprehensive, and we've been working on this, and more to come on this, but we all have to do this together because it matters so much and we have to speak in one voice. So I'm going to start in regulatory. Even though I'm going to talk about FDA, there's implications across global regulatory for what we're talking about, because regulators have to make decisions and we have to inform regulators of your lived experience, what matters to you, your preferences for treatments, et cetera. But a little on FDA. So what does the FDA do? I think you're all aware they protect the public from unsafe events, promote the public health, and they follow the laws and rules and regulations set forth by Congress through the people. It gives us an opportunity to look at the legislation attached to them so that we can make tweaks along the way about how FDA does its job. And their history is really interesting. It's really come about from a combination of public health emergencies and advocacy. They were formed in 1906. It actually was formed following an outcry of the public due to a novel that came out by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle, which highlighted unsanitary, unsafe manufacturing of food. The people spoke, Congress reacted, and they formed the agency and its authority. But tipping points have changed how the agency does things over time. 1938, another tipping point when an elixir was improperly prepared and 100 deaths occurred from that elixir. So here, more powers were granted over safety of drugs. 1962, this was safety and efficacy when a drug called thalidomide was being given to mothers for morning sickness in Europe, and it was causing birth defects. In this case, the FDA made the right decision by not approving the drug, but it codified that power over safety and efficacy. And then in our more recent history, the HIV/AIDS crisis, what this highlighted was the need to speed the development process when it comes to drugs. They were not getting through the regulatory process quick enough. So what happened was Congress worked with drug manufacturers and crafted what's called PDUFA, I know Washington and their acronyms, I know it's hard to keep up with them, but this one is really critical. The Prescription Drug User Fee Act was passed, where a deal was crafted where manufacturers would pay fees to the FDA, adding to their staff capacity, adding to their budgets, with the idea of speeding the drug development process. And it was successful, and it's renewed every 5 years, and it gives us a chance to go in every 5 years and see if we can make tweaks to how the FDA does what they do. It also brought about the accelerated approval provision and pathway, rather. So another tipping point that Andy mentioned was in 2012. This is something we worked on together along with our partners in rare disease, and this was the birth of patient-focused drug development. This was, in my view, a tipping point for rare disease and for the patient voice. This bill was a game changer for our involvement in drug development. And just some of the key provisions of the bill, Congress said, utilize the pathway you have for accelerated approval in rare conditions. And as Andy mentioned, we're seeing more use of that. The other part of the bill was to mandate that FDA needs to be more transparent about how they make decisions. Give us insight in how you weigh benefits and risks and the factors involved in approving a drug, and then incorporating patient and family perspectives into the process. And this has been a game changer. And we're going to talk about patient-focused drug development and how we can get more involved in it. And just listening to presentations yesterday, we are already underway. You heard about how your input has impacted the development of so much, including outcome measures and meaningfulness. But of course, there's always more work to do. In response to the legislation, this is what the FDA launched, the Patient-Focused Drug Development Initiative. Gave an opportunity for direct engagement with patients and families, with regulators, to talk about what mattered to them so that we can have more input into both drug development and drug review. And then this new public-facing framework called the Benefit Risk Framework. This is the signature tool FDA uses to tell us how they've made a decision about a new drug application. Just to look up the factors that they have to consider, they have to fill this out, and we now can see more into how they actually make those decisions. So this is why we do need a strategy specific to FDA, because when a new drug application is before them, we want them to understand this community. They look at the data that's in front of them and the information that they have when they're making what's called benefit risk determinations. So they need to understand your lived experience, your preferences for treatments, and really what constitutes meaningful benefit, which has been a theme. And opportunities still exist, and those opportunities take the form of direct engagement with regulators in this community and data collection. So, and some of this has happened. I was thrilled to see that a listening session happened in 2018 to meet with CDER, the Center for Drug Evaluation. And 2018 was a long time ago, and a lot has happened. So the FDA needs to hear from us again, and we're looking to plan a meeting, possibly in late 2024 into 25, but you all will have a chance to be involved in that meeting and to lend your voice in the process. Then more recently, Allison spoke at a webinar with CBER. This is the center that oversees gene therapy, and she got to tell the story of the Angelman syndrome community and about FAST and what we're doing to advance drug development and research. So we have to request more in-person time. Lots of this is virtual now, post-COVID, which I don't love, but we are going to be looking at time points where we can engage directly with regulators. And the data collection, or patient experience data, as Annie mentioned, is critical, right? So when you look at what patient experience data, it's a rather broad definition, okay? It encompasses many things. And now FDA had to put out guidance. We actually legislated that FDA needs to give us more insight into patient experience data. Annie and I worked on this legislation with others in the rare disease community. And this is straight from FDA, right? The experiences, perspectives, needs, and priorities of patients related to symptoms, conditions, impact on condition, natural history, impact on functioning, quality of life, experience with current treatments or any therapy, input on outcomes that are most important, what's most meaningful. and your preferences for outcomes and treatments, and then benefit-risk trade-offs at the end of the day. And some of this data you're already aware of. Patient experience data is made up of natural history data, qualitative interviews, focus group surveys. Anytime you're asked by ASF or FAST to participate in an interview, a focus group, a survey, it's for a reason. And trust that that information is going to go to people. It's going to inform people who may not be informed about your lived experience, and hopefully they'll be making more informed decisions on your behalf. Registry data, please continue. I know it's burdensome, but it is so important that we continually update this information. And Megan and Megan are here from Australia. They came all the way from Australia just so you can update your registry profile. So please see them at the break. Patient preference data, this is an area we can collect more information on. And clinical outcome assessments, that's also considered to be patient experience data. And then finally, caregiver observer reported outcomes like the ORCA. So all these form under the definition of patient experience data. And as mentioned before, some of this has been underway, looking at your prioritization for symptoms to treat and concept models that have been developed, and looking at the current measures and are the elements meaningful? What can we do to ensure we understand what a minimal change in an outcome would mean to your day-to-day and the lives of your loved ones? So the work of ABOM has been incredible to advance this work. We have the ORCA that's been developed, and this is true patient-focused drug development when you see how the ORCA was developed with families, with experts, because you are the experts at the end of the day. You are making the treatment choices. You're the ones that have to bear the associated risks and uncertainties, so you should be the ones giving advice and input on what matters. And some of this work is also informing development of other devices like wearables. Natural history data I mentioned. Thank you to everybody that's been participating in these studies. They mean so much because FDA considers this data when they're evaluating things. Congratulations to the groups that have been doing this globally and having these up and running. We're grateful. More data is needed, and it really does help make a complete picture of what's going on in the disease. And then the registry who I just mentioned earlier, we need to find the patients, we need them to fill out their surveys in GASR, and then we need to analyze and understand it. And we're working to actually put it into modeling efforts to better understand the disease from early stage to late. So it's so important to have your voice heard and have the data inform everything that's going on. And PFDD is not just a US phenomenon. We're seeing efforts across the world where this concept of, oh wow, we should integrate the perspectives of families into drug development. I know it's crazy that we've had to legislate it, we'd have to push for it, but we're here. And luckily, Ellen is going to help to work with countries individually to see how we can do this with other regulatory bodies, and we have to harmonize our efforts globally, because we can do some of these surveys across countries, and I talked to Fast France about this yesterday, who are interested. Okay, so Congress. I know it's hard to convince you to work with these people. They have the lowest approval rating in the country, but there is a reason. And there's a chance and an opportunity for us to look at what are they doing in Angelman syndrome with your tax dollars in the US, and how can we impact the focus and funding of appropriations and things that touch agencies that impact your life. So why Congress? They're a reactive body. Your voices, your stories, you make powerful connections with those who represent you because they need to understand what you're going through in your experience. If you live in their district, they need to know. They're driven by constituent demands at the end of the day. And we've had a lot of success in this in Duchenne, and we want to continue to push Congress on both rare disease and individual conditions as well. And the hope is that it leads to action. And these are just some of the agencies that touch Angelman syndrome. We want to understand, what are they doing when it comes to our community? Where's the money going? And what can we do to impact it? And the focus of those tax dollars in the work they're doing. So Congress has the power of the purse. This is one of their key powers. So they set funding priorities and direction for things that impact our community. We want to influence that, and how we're going to speak directly with our elected officials, understand what they're doing, and try to influence things moving forward. The other reason why Congress, because of legislation that Annie talked about, that impacts not just us, but all rare disease. And when we work together collectively, it is very, very powerful. And I've seen it when we've done the Hill visits with thousands from the rare disease community. And we have been able to move legislation that has changed the way FDA does things, the way NIH funds research. So that's why we have to push on legislation. And it's the same thing, it's telling your story. So Amanda and I have been talking about a first official Hill Day and a fly-in. For those who might be interested, please talk to us. We're not asking you to be policy experts, lawyers. The most important thing is to tell your story, is to meet with members of Congress and their staff so they understand what it's like to walk a day in your shoes. Empathy is the only thing, in my view, that has ever changed the world. And when you make these lasting connections, it does lead to results. So we'll train you. I know it's intimidating to think about talking to Congress and their staff, but we will make sure that you're well supported. And the only thing we're asking you to do is to tell your story. So we're going to do an in-person on the Hill meeting. So our goals: build relationships over time. We have to do this consistently. Advocacy is consistent and persistent. And we have to do this every year and talk to those who represent you to understand how this money can impact our community and ensure they pass legislation that matters to us. So access and coverage. I know some might be saying, well, we don't have approved therapies. Why are we looking at access and coverage? But as Annie mentioned, you have to start early. And you have to do some things, and you have to work with our pharmaceutical partners who are also thinking ahead towards access and coverage. The worst thing that can happen, a parent say to me, I thought the worst thing was not having an approved therapy. Well, I was wrong. The worst thing was having an approved therapy and not being able to access it. That was heartbreaking. So we want to look at this. And my credit goes to board member Lauren Hoffer, who has been spearheading this. Lauren had the opportunity to start the day off on a major conference for Artia Solutions, who are here today for their Crossroads meeting. This is a meeting of state Medicaid officials, directors, and people that make decisions on approved therapies at the state level, because each state is different. Our lovely system in the US of healthcare. I know that our friends outside the US are like, I don't know how you people do this. But it gave us an opportunity for Lauren to talk about Angelman syndrome and her personal story, and to all those families who participated in the video. Thank you. We showed a video in the beginning, and it was incredible. We created amazing relationships. And we're working with Artia along with other partners, the Garner Group and Medicus. They'll be presenting later on, and Sarah Pitlock, to form a strategy with payers and with state-specific efforts. And some of it's just awareness. You're going to hear from Amanda Moore and I about opportunities for you within your state to talk to state legislatures and recognize Angelman Syndrome Awareness Day. I know it seems like, how is that impactful? But it's a process, and we have to get, with a rare disease, you have to get more people to understand what it is, and this is just one step. And then there are these state rare disease advisory councils that are popping up all over the country. This is a really great evolution we're seeing at the state level, that they're forming these councils to advise on state-specific policy. And we're going to engage those. One of them is Terry Joe Bichelle actually sits on one of the RDACs, and we'll engage you in the hallway, Terry. We're going to be advocating at the state level because state issues matter, right? Where you live matters. Medicaid waivers, coverage, out-of-pocket cost, and getting ready for newborn screening. These are all things that are really critical to do ahead of time. And then for payers, we need to fill gaps in data that may exist for them to make a proper evaluation when it comes to whether or not to cover a drug. So thank you everyone last year for filling out the Caregiver Impact Survey. This is just a piece along the way that we're going to collect data. Once again, I'm going to plug the registry because it matters, and that data can be used ultimately by payers. We need to quantify more on caregiver preferences for treatments, and this is something we're going to be doing in the coming year. And then partnering, of course, with companies, because we don't want to do anything that duplicates efforts. We want to be partners in this and do it collaboratively. But we need more patient experience data at the end of the day to inform not only regulatory, but access. So call to action, to summarize, there's many ways you can get involved. We're not asking you to do everything. Everyone can do something. And whether you've already participated in some of these or you're interested, again, please talk to us. And we need to get as many people involved so that we are informing those who may not understand Angelman syndrome so they can make more informed decisions about you and your loved ones. Join us in Congress if you can. More information will be coming out. You can also advocate in district when your member is in district and home. And then in access and coverage, we have these state-specific activities related to the awareness proclamations, RDACs, and really getting ready for newborn screening advocacy, which I know I will work with Every Life and have been working with Every Life on. And then data. Healthcare is understood through the language and data, and there is a science to patient input. So we're going to be doing more surveys. I promise you if a survey comes out, there's a reason for it, and we're going to share the results publicly like we are later on today. So you learn from others. We, at PPMD, when Annie and I was there, we learned from other communities. The good thing about the rare disease world is we share. And we try to mention how things may have gone better and how to not repeat mistakes. And it's an amazing, amazing community of partnership. And I think our goal is to be the next model when it comes to advocacy. And if I have anything to do with it, if Amanda has anything to do with it, we will be that next model. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.